Well, let's bring Frank Klose into the conversation. It's a historic contract here, Frank. We're all a little surprised by it. I know you probably are included in that. Pretty surprised that the Phillies figured out a way. And I got to assume, I want to get your opinion on this. Is this Gabe Kapler a lot of influence from him saying, guys, I don't care what you got to do, but that kid needs to come up north with me?
Yeah, I think that's a real consideration. Like Kapler is all about Scott Kingery, and it seems like they put a lot of trust into Kapler here, and they said, okay, we're going to find a way to make this happen. And, all the talk about service time, although Matt Klentak in his press conference this morning, he actually said that did not ever come up between Kingery and his agents and the Phillies. But what they did was they just said, we're going to find a way to get around this service time issue so nobody cares, and then you could just come up and play. That way we bring our 25 best north, even if there is no real place for him.
That's, I guess, one of the big questions is there is no place for him naturally, but how much playing time do you think he ends up getting? I mean, is he a 3-day-a-weeker, a 4-day-a-weeker, a 5-day, every day? How do you see his playing time?
That's something I don't think that they even know the answer of yet totally. I think there's a natural pairing with J.P. Crawford, in that Crawford is a left-handed hitter and Kingery is a right-handed hitter. So you might see Kingery play shortstop against the left-handed pitchers that they might face. So I think that's going to happen for sure. But aside from that, they're just going to have to kind of mix and match because they really don't have any other left-handed starters. They get their left-handed at bats from Cesar Hernandez and from Carlos Santana, from Andrew Knapp behind the plate, but they're all switch hitters. So there aren't any really natural platoon partners other than maybe having him play some short when Crawford plays, does not play. And, even at third base, Michael Franco's been doing a lot better lately. So I know a lot of people were calling for him to play third base frequently, but he'll play some third base, I'm sure, but he'll play some second base too. And but as you've seen over the years, like the Ben Zobrist of the world champion Cubs a couple of years ago kind of started a new trend. And then last year, the Dodgers, who went far into the playoffs, of course, they had Chris Taylor, who bounced around the diamond for them. So it seems to be working on other teams, although too, as you go through the season, there'll be injuries, there'll be days somebody's a little banged up. It just kind of works itself out.
Frank, do you think this means that there's maybe a trade coming, or do they just let it play itself out for now with the way the schedule sets up early in the season?
Yeah, I think it'll let it play itself out. I mean, I think they would certainly listen if that team called them and wanted to trade them, a Chris Archer type or maybe a Danny Duffy type, although he might be a little hurt at the moment. They'll listen for sure. And it's kind of interesting too when you look ahead and if they're in on Manny Machado next year, obviously everybody's not going to stay. So there's going to be some movement somewhere down the line. And, it might just have to be, who's not playing well. You can get some at bats in those spots, and maybe it's a matter of when somebody gets hurt. It's a lot better to have Scott Kingery playing than Pedro Florimon.
Frank, if the Phillies did make a move, what do they need to add to the current team? What should they look for in a deal if they were to make a move?
The two things I think they don't necessarily have at the moment, one would be a nice young, I won't say stud, but a solid left-handed starter in their rotation. That's why I like that name Danny Duffy in particular. If the Royals are ever willing to move on from him, I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Phillies in that he's signed semi-long term and he's still pretty young. So if they could ever pry him away from the Royals, I think that's a really good match. And maybe still in the bullpen. I mean, there's probably not going to be a closer, quote unquote, in this Kapler bullpen if you're going to follow the types of things he's been saying lately. But still, they could probably use a relief ace. But there may not be one out there at the moment for trade because there aren't that many in the game anymore. You have your Kenley Janssens, you have your Craig Kimbrels, but there really aren't a lot of stud closers out there anymore.
By the way, how did Scotty Jetpack celebrate his new contract? He homered today. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. It was a back-to-back jack with Andrew Knapp by the way. It looks like Andrew Knapp has made the team. That means Cameron Rupp was designated for assignment, Frank, and the Phillies made a couple of roster moves on yesterday. Before today's game, they decided to select the contract of Drew Hutchinson. So with that, Rupp had to be designated for assignment. But what is Hutchinson's role on this team going to be?
Well, Hutchinson that's still kind of undetermined. The Phillies also today optioned Zach Eflin to AAA. That was something that kind of happened. I was a little bit surprised, but it looks like of Hutchinson, Lively, and Pivetta, two of them will start, and one will kind of fill the role that Mark Leiter was going to hold on the Phillies, which could have been the long man / emergency starter role. I did see a few people kind of mentioning that Hutchinson could do that role, but nothing's been really announced yet. So you could see the Phillies go forward with Lively and Pivetta in the rotation, and Hutchinson is kind of that swing man who could start sometimes, who could come out of the bullpen. I think they're going to need a long man early, especially with Arrieta not really getting much action before spring, in the spring training games before the season starts. So you might need somebody like Hutchinson to jump on the back of Arrieta's starts early on to give them some innings. So you definitely need somebody in that role, and Hutchinson might be the guy who does that.
Yeah, and they also sent Roman Quinn down to AAA as well. So Eflin down, Quinn down, and over the weekend, Rupp designated for assignment. It means Pivetta and Lively are going to be the two guys, that are going to stay in the rotation. And Jake Arrieta will make his Phillies debut on the home opener, which we kind of hinted at last week here on the show. But Pivetta and Lively in the rotation, and Arrieta will pitch on the home opener. So it looks like the Phillies, still are going to have some decisions to make even after this season gets underway.
Yeah, so it sounds like Arrieta's going to pitch tomorrow, which is the Grapefruit League finale. Then he's going to throw a simulated game in New York City so that he can pitch a game in the opening weekend on. It looks like it'll be Sunday's game, I think, that he's going to get to pitch. So he'll be there for the full introductions and stuff on opening day, which is, I think they wanted to do that for the fans. There's still a chance Arrieta could fly down to Clearwater and start the minor league complex, but it looks like with somebody with his resume, they might just try to do a simulated game while they're on the road. And then that means until then, though, he's going to be carried on the active roster. They're not going to try to DL him or anything like that. So early on, the skipped starts in the rotation then are essentially going to be Arrieta's starts. So that means they really need to get those final two rosters spots in place for starting pitchers, and probably Lively and Pivetta are going to make those starts.
Frank Klose with us, Phillies baseball right around the corner. Frank, while Kingery was a big surprise, are there any other surprises so far as that Phillies roster firms itself up and begins to take shape?
Yeah, I mean that's really the big surprise. If you on the back of Arrieta, a big surprise. I wouldn't put it past them at this point for another surprise to come out of somewhere. There's still a couple days left before the season. It sounds like they're being bold, not just in the clubhouse and on the field, but also in the front office. So who knows? I mean, while Matt Klentak said he didn't anticipate any more major moves, maybe they will surprise us with another move, because it seems like everything was going to follow the neat and tidy normal course of things with the likes of Kingery, and here they come and found a way to give him that contract, which by the way could be a very good contract for them if he works out. So I wouldn't put it past them to do something else, and if I probably couldn't predict it right now if I was going to try to come up with something.
Well, what other roster moves still need to be decided?
Really, the bullpen. They have a lot of right-handed guys who throw hard, none of whom have really stepped up and really proven themselves. So I think the bullpen's going to need a little bit of fleshing out in these last couple days. They're going to go with the two lefties. It sounds like it'll be Adam Morgan and Hobie Milner, which both of them pitched well for them down the stretch. Hector Neris is in there. The new veterans Nishak and Hunter and Luis Garcia. So, but beyond that, there's whoever the next person in there is. Victor Arano is still kind of hanging around and doing a good job. But it seems like there's a lot of right-handed arms that are kind of options for the Phillies that might fill that role. So So if you take Hutchinson, it means they're trying to figure out who that last right-handed arm is. And who knows, Pedro Beato is still in camp, so they're going to pick one of those guys. It's a matter of who is it.
And obviously the Phillies starting rotation is kind of set, but not really set in the way they'll go. We know the 4 guys plus Arrieta, with Eflin getting sent down. As Frank just hinted at, the bullpen still has a little bit more work to get done before they open up the season on Thursday in Atlanta. And then they're in New York after that before their home opener, and that's when Jake Arrieta will make his first start. But Scott Kingery signs a pretty unprecedented deal, and he will make the team, which we've kind of said, Frank, that was not going to happen. We didn't think anyway, unless this deal was done. Now, they said they didn't even think about that. That wasn't in consideration. But realistically, he wasn't going to make this team without this deal, right?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, if you're bringing up Kingery in a situation where he doesn't have a starting job every day, it seems foolish to do that when he his service time issue is, if he's down in AAA till just April 13th, they could have had that whole extra year of control. So if you're bringing him up without that contract, then it really kind of seems silly because, how much would a bench player, what difference would he make in just a couple weeks' time? He could, who knows? It could be a lot, but it seems like when you're talking about the long-term health of the organization, then you kind of want to keep him around later when things are going well for you, according to plan. So it looks like now that he's still going to be with them in the good days ahead, as they feel like they're going to have, and now the service time isn't an issue. So you know what? You just bring your best 25 north.
Real quick, before we let you run here, we got the Phillies mailbag tomorrow with Frank. Send us your mailbag questions at Frank Klose on Twitter. So if there's anything we didn't hit on here or anything you want Frank to answer for you, send a mailbag question for Frank. We'll do that on tomorrow's show. But I guess, Pete asked about a trade. Hernandez, Franco, Crawford. Are they the 3 most at the top of the list, or is there somebody else that is a trade candidate?
I suppose they would consider trading somebody like Herrera. I think somebody like Odubel Herrera is going to help get you the young, controllable starter that they're looking for. Because if you're a team that's trading that starter, you're going to say, look, we need somebody that's going to be in our lineup every day that's also young and controllable. And with the contract that Herrera has, it's probably not going to be a financial hindrance to any team who might acquire him. Now, that's not to say the Phillies are going to shop Herrera. It's just that I wouldn't be shocked if his name kind of came into the conversations, because the Phillies do have options in the outfield. So, and one of them even being Kingery at this point. So if Kingery if they're comfortable slotting him in right field or center field, well, then why not? You also have Aaron Altherr, who's a natural center fielder, who ends up playing the corners a lot. So I wouldn't be shocked if that's a name that comes up. Although if you're the Phillies and you're trying to make the postseason, that trade probably doesn't happen during the season. That might be a discussion for next winter. And really, I think they would only make a trade that seems like it's from a position of excess during the season. It would probably be somebody who isn't playing a lot, and I'm pretty sure that Herrera would be a regular cog in the lineup for 2018. But down the line, next winter, if they're trying to, we always throw their names around like the Chris Archers or the Danny Duffys of the world. Herrera might be the type of guy that draws some interest.
I think I saw that Hellickson got released today, right?
Well, he signed another minor league deal with the Nationals. So basically, he didn't make the team, but he's going to go play at AAA for them, which is hard to believe given, a year ago he was about to start a $17.2 million season for the Phillies. And you got the Phillies something in trade.
Yeah, Frank Klose, everybody. He'll be back tomorrow with the mailbag, so send your mailbag questions at Frank Klose on Twitter. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, guys.